What's up, everybody? Happy Saturday. Welcome to episode number 2 of Coast to Coast College Pregame Tailgate Show. I'm one of your hosts, Bill Shawcross. You can call me Uncle Shally, Scholastic Shally. Before we get going this week, I'm going to introduce you to my other two hosts. Below me this week, I got Mr. Buckeye himself, Mr. Cottrell Simpson, holding down the Midwest for us. What's going on, Cottrell?
Nothing much, man. Finally get to see them Buckeyes get to work. We finally got a quarterback, officially in Kyle McCord. So pretty excited about this here Saturday.
And last but certainly not least, before we get going this week, I got to introduce you to Mr. West Coast himself, Mr. Oregon, Mr. Duck, and guy that officially I think has a nickname. I think we're gonna go with I Black Elmore, Mr. Alex Elmore. What's going on, bud?
What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me. Trying to bring that respect back to the West Coast that you East Coasters have so thrown to the side over the years. I'm ready to talk some football with you and get this Saturday underway.
I can't wait either. So this week, man, I mean, listen, if you're a college football fan, this is, tomorrow morning is, today actually is kind of pretty much like Christmas morning. For some fans of some teams, they already got their season started off this week. We had a big game last night with two big name programs, which we're going to get into first. Before we do that, just go over the show for you real quick today. We're going to go over last night's game between Florida and Utah. Game went a lot different than some people thought, myself included. We're going to go over our college, our predictions for all the conference championship games this season. We're going to go over the Big Five, obviously, ACC, Big 10, Big 12, SEC, and certainly, last but not least, Pac-12. We're going to go over our game previews for the week. We got 4 games to go over. And then we're also going to have, a new segment that we're going to do every week. And we're going to start off this week. We're going to call it One Thing to Watch For. We're going to do it this week with our favorite teams, since they're all playing teams that they should walk through easily. But we're just going to have a quick little discussion about one thing we're going to watch for, in all those games. So we're going to get started right away. We got a lot to get into, so we're going to roll here. Last night, Salt Lake City. First, pretty much big preeminent game of the year. Florida went to Utah, and Utah handled business, to put it lightly. What'd you guys think? What were your first impressions of the game last night?
Go ahead, Alex. Take it away.
Honestly, I was quite surprised, especially with Cam Rising being out of the lineup. It was a last-minute decision for Utah, and I think that ultimately played into Florida kind of planning defensively as far as who they were going to prepare for. And ultimately, Utah's defense really surprised me, only allowing 13 rushing yards and 0.6 yards per attempt. I know there was a couple of plays in there that kind of skewed that number a little bit, but regardless, their defense was swarming to the ball, absolutely dominated Florida up front. And I was really quite impressed, and actually it changed my mind on my Pac-12 pick for later in the show, a little sneak peek.
Now, Cottrell, you were the same side as I was. I thought there was a decent chance Florida was going to go in there and win the game outright. I thought they at least were going to cover. We both started out the year with an L. What did you see last night?
I mean, the biggest thing for me is that, for whatever reason, I just completely went against what I already knew. And that's Graham Mertz stinks. Like I said that all last season. I said it when he transferred to Florida. I didn't understand the quarterback move. And then I immediately went out, and my first pick of the college football season was to say Graham Mertz was going to go into Utah and, beat that Utah team or cover the 5.5 points. So, I got to take complete fault for that. I don't know what I was thinking there. That's just completely on me, but I guarantee it won't happen again. But just watching that game, though, the biggest thing for me was that it almost felt like for that Florida team, the stage was too bright. That Utah team, obviously they didn't have Cam Rising, but they didn't seem scared of the moment at all. They went right out. They got Florida off the field. And in their first play on offense, they threw a bomb for a 70-yard touchdown. And from that point on, the writing was on the wall for Florida. There was never really a point where Florida was in that game. And so I think for me, that says a lot about that Utah team. And, Dalton Kincaid is no longer there, but if they're going to be relying on the strength of that defense, that Utah team can make some noise in that Pac-12.
I couldn't agree more. And it's one of those things, I agree with you 100%. Like, I got done watching the game, and then I was like, kind of the same mindset you did. I was like, at the end of the day, like, I picked Graham Mertz to go into Utah and win me, whatever you want to call it, win me a bet. And it's like one of those things in hindsight, you say it out loud and you're like, I mean, how dumb can you be, Bill? Like, and I agree. When some things change, the more they stay the same. Graham Mertz is Graham Mertz. It's who he's going to be. I think at the beginning of the game last night, I think he looked good. I think they were moving the pocket with him. He was showing, honestly, he was showing more athleticism than I thought he had that I ever saw out of him at Wisconsin. But they couldn't get anything going. Everything was a check down. I mean, he averaged like 6 yards, an attempt. That's not going to get it done against a good defense. And Utah did return most of their defense from last year, who led the Pac-12 against the rush, and they did a great job. My biggest thing is, and I'm going to say this, I want to be the first one to say it. I think Billy Napier is on the hot seat. If that is what that team is going to be this year, they are in trouble in the SEC, like in trouble. If that's all they got, if that's all they can do offensively, I don't know what the season outlook is if you're a Florida Gators fan. It's not good. I promise you that. You already mentioned it. I mean, if you look at Graham Mertz's numbers on the surface, 31 of 43 for 333, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 1 fumble. Not the end of the world. I don't think you could say, he's necessarily the absolute reason they lost the game. But I think if you're being honest and you're looking yourself in the mirror, if you're a Gators fan, he's not going to be the reason you guys probably win too many games this year either. I thought the game plan was terrible. If I'm being honest, Trevor Etienne, their starting running back, who honestly, he's a good little back. 7 carries. You only get him to touch the ball 7 times. And to your point, they hit that. Utah hit that first bomb right. First play of the game to what's that kid's name? Money Parks for 70 yards for a touchdown. It was only 7-0. Florida got to 7-3. It's not like they were trailing by huge amounts the whole game and they had to throw the ball to try to catch up. I thought the game plan was terrible. I thought Florida played scared. I agree that the Utah run defense is great, but I mean, you at least have to, give the impression that you're going to try to run the ball. And it's what you saw in the second half. Utah only had 6 or 7 guys in the box. They just dropped back and let Mertz have all these 3- and 4-yard completions underneath, and Florida had to keep punting. On the Utah side of the ball, though, you got to give a huge shout out to Bryson Barnes. I'm sure all the Utah players knew he was going to start all week. I think it was, a really, really bad kept secret. There was no chance Cam Rising was going to play in this game. But he came out and balled out, man. Did the big thing. He didn't make any mistakes. Didn't cost his team any points. They get a huge home win to start the season. And if that's the kind of play they're going to get from him, until Cam's ready to play, I think Utah's okay. And I agree. I think Utah goes from dark horse Pac-12 pick to, possibly more of a contender. I heard Alex say maybe, changes his pick. And, Cottrell was a little bit higher on them already than other people were. So, yeah, I mean, I think if you're a Utah fan, you got to be as happy as can be waking up Friday morning. And, if you're a Florida fan, I don't know. It could be a long couple months if you're a Gators fan.
100% agree. I mean, I think that's plenty time talking about Graham Mertz, but I want to kind of talk about those games that we saw even last week. We talked about it on the show. We previewed Notre Dame. We previewed USC and San Jose State. Big thing for me was Sam Hartman looked pretty good in his Notre Dame debut. If that's going to be the quarterback play, and I get it, they were playing, one of the academies, and clearly that Navy offense hadn't really changed too much. We thought we were going to see a little bit more of an air raid from them, but they were same old show. So got to give Sam Hartman his credit though. If Notre Dame's going to consistently get that caliber quarterback play, I'm never bought into that Notre Dame hype train because I always think every single year they're going to be overrated. But damn, Sam Hartman looked pretty good in that showing.
Yes, I mean, if you're a Notre Dame fan, I think you do take it with some kind of a grain of salt. It's you're playing Navy in a different country, and you're playing Navy, who again is trying to transfer to not a Navy style of football. That being said, if you watch football and your eyes work, Sam Hartman looked damn good. Looked very poised, looked very comfortable for his first start as Notre Dame. quarterback and what's, technically a new system. Like Tommy Rees isn't there. I'm sure they probably kept a lot of the same terminology and tried to carry over as much of it as they could. But I think if you're a Notre Dame fan, that's the one thing that would be encouraging to me is how comfortable he looked. They executed very well. There was no like gaps or like clunky times in the game where they couldn't move the ball or anything, anything like that. I think he looked comfortable and, I think he looked very at ease and very in control of the offense. And Sam Hartman could sling it, man. Listen, he came from Wake Forest where he threw the ball 50 times every game. So, I mean, him throwing the ball over the yard is not going to be, nothing new for him. They got to play somebody, and I want to see them play against, a Power 5 defense and see where they, how they look after that. I don't want to get on the Notre Dame hype train too early because I do agree with Cottrell that ride usually ends in a train wreck at some point. But that being said, first time out, if you're a Notre Dame fan, I think you have to be very happy with your transfer quarterback. Alex, how did you look at that game?
Well, I watched that game, and honestly, Notre Dame going up against Navy, like you had mentioned earlier, in a whole different country. I didn't expect Navy to put up too much of a fight. I was looking for two things on the Notre Dame end of the football. Is one, I look for consistency and consistent decision-making at quarterback, and I look for them to not turn the ball over, and they managed to do both of those things really well. Sam Hartman, like we've been talking about the last few minutes, was very efficient, 19 for 23, had as many incompletions as he did touchdown passes. He looked phenomenal with the decision-making in a new offense. And that's really what I wanted to see. I also was really kind of wanting to anticipate how those freshman receivers were going to step up and kind of help him out with, how his ball placement. We need guys that are going to use their hands, be able to catch that ball. And luckily, Greathouse scored 2 touchdowns, or as I like to say, he's great at getting to the house. But he's honestly going to be a name that you're going to kind of hear a lot this year. I like the way he ran routes. He was clean. He was crisp. He was great. Again, the level of the defenders that he faced this past week going forward competition is going to increase for him. However, I do like with Sam Hartman throwing the ball, this Notre Dame offense is sky's the limit. All over Facebook after the game, people were freaking out about Notre Dame going to the college football playoff. And honestly, we're a little bit too early for that, but I was very pleased with what I saw as far as their offensive efficiency and being able to hold on to the ball and not force turnovers. I was really happy with that.
I think Cottrell would probably agree with us about his fan base as well. I know how overreactionary Michigan fans can get. I would say Ohio State's probably in the same category. There is nobody worse than Notre Dame fans, like none. Like, and it's not close. They'll beat Navy and then play Temple and be 2-0, and they'll be like, we should be like the second ranked team in the country, and they believe it when they say it. I promise you, they do. I know too many of them. But to switch gears from Notre Dame here, we're going to go to the other game that we talked about, last week. And I think if you're a Pac-12 guy, Alex, I'm gonna let you go first on this one. I think there were certain things, if you're an anti-USC guy, which Alex might be, I think there were certain things you could look at that game that would give you hope if you're an Oregon fan. But I also think there were things in that game that I think would concern me if I was an Oregon fan. What did you think about the USC game?
So obviously, like we expected, Caleb Williams, looking like Caleb Williams, very efficient on his own right, 278 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. But one thing that made me extremely happy as an Oregon Duck fan over here on the West Coast is their defense still looks like absolute trash. I would put a dumpster out there on the corners. I would put a dumpster out there on the corners. But realistically, Zachariah Branch is a stud. Again, kind of like Notre Dame fans already talking about the college football playoff. People are already saying this is the second coming of Reggie Bush. And I'm sorry, but my heyday, Reggie Bush was the stud, was the king, rocking USC left and right, kicking Oregon's butt on the ground. I do not see Reggie Bush quite yet, but the potential is absolutely there. He was dominant. He was great on the returns. He has great hands. I would like to see them use him more in the offense and see really what his ceiling can be this season. But Siobhan Cordero obviously looked efficient. No turnovers for San Jose State, which has really made me happy. I was expecting USC's defense to try to strip the ball, get a couple picks here and there. They were not able to do so. One thing that did also make me happy regarding being an Oregon Duck fan is that they only had 1 sack on the entire game. So that defensive line is not getting pushed. They outsized and outmatched San Jose State's offensive line and were unable to get to the quarterback. And to me, but that tells me that Oregon Ducks' offensive scheme of running the ball is going to run all over the field, and that makes me extremely happy going forward and guarantees me that USC is not going to be in the CFP this year, and that always makes me happy.
Good show. What do you think? You think if you're cause for concern on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, of course, USC. I mean, that game was definitely, if I'm a USC fan, that game was very disheartening. I would expect the team, and I'm not even saying San Jose State is a bad team. We expected them to cover that 30-point spread and things like that. But if I'm USC and I'm that fan base, I was fully expecting them to at least come out with somewhat of a chip on their shoulder. That first half was very, very competitive. And I know, USC ultimately ended up winning by 28, but, that first half was way closer than it really should have been. I'm very concerned about that defense. And, I do want to say, though, to Alex's point, Zachariah Branch definitely had a phenomenal game. And that being his first game as a true freshman, I do fully believe the sky is the limit for that kid. Now, I'm not going to say that he's Reggie Bush because I think that's crazy, but I did see all those comparisons. And to an extent, I understand it because he's probably their most explosive guy in the return game since a guy like Reggie Bush. So obviously USC has had a lot of, really good receivers come through there. In years past, you're thinking about, Michael Pittman, you got Jordan Addison, obviously recently, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Zachariah Branch is really a new dynamic. He's very shifty, very quick. You put the ball in his hands and he's very much a playmaker. And I will say too, Taj Washington did look all right. He only had a couple catches in that game, but he looked like the number one receiver that I fully expected him to be this upcoming year. But at the absolute end of the day, that engine is only going to go as far as Caleb Williams takes them. And Caleb Williams looked really good in that game. That being his first game under his belt, first game back under his belt, I should say. I thought he looked fine. And, I'm not afraid of Caleb Williams being ready to step up to the moment. I've seen in games past last year where when Caleb Williams had to put the team on his back, he would go out there and try to be Superman, even if he wasn't feeling 100%. And I don't want to compare USC to the Kansas City Chiefs because that's not what they are. But to an extent, when you have a guy like Caleb Williams and he's your quarterback and you can throw him out there on the field every week, he's going to give your team a chance to win no matter what's going on around them. Clearly, it doesn't always work out for them. We saw that last year. They lost twice last year to Utah, but Caleb Williams is always going to have USC in a position to have a chance to win a football game, no matter who they're going against.
Yeah, so I agree with everything both of you guys said. If I'm being honest, I think Caleb is still going to be, the defining, reason, why they succeeded or why they don't. So if you're a USC fan, I don't know how much you would be down. I'm going to say that because San Jose was not a walkover. We knew it wasn't going to be. We talked about it last week on the show. We know how good Cordero is. I'd be a little concerned the fact that it was 21-14 and a half. I mean, San Jose was firmly in that game. But Caleb came out in the second half and had a great Caleb Williams, type half, and they pulled away. I think it's a good first game for them. I think it did expose some things though. I think you have a quarterback that looked good and move the ball at will against that defense. And you're going, if you're USC, you have to get through. You're going to have to get through a Utah team, and then you're going to have to get through two teams with two very explosive quarterbacks in Oregon with Bo Nix and Washington with Michael Penix Jr. That's concerning for me if I'm a USC fan. Back to Zachariah Branch, I think we have to pump the brakes on the Reggie stuff, just a tad. I think he had a great debut. I agree with what Cottrell said. I think if you were high on him, you saw the ceiling is where you thought it was, and what his potential can be. I think he makes Caleb Williams' life a lot easier if he could stay healthy and stay on the field and play that way, because I think it takes some off the shoulders of Caleb Williams. They didn't have a consistent running game last year. It was pretty much, Caleb Williams was going to drop back and either run, make a play, or he's going to find Jordan Addison or one of the guys, and that was their offense last year. I think if you can run the ball consistently, if you're a USC fan, it accomplishes two things. I think it takes, it helps Caleb Williams stay more healthy. It's less hits he's going to absorb. But number two, I think it's going to keep your defense off the field. I think it's a situation where maybe instead of scoring 42 points every game, you score 35, you can chew up 6 more minutes of clock because you're running the ball and your defense isn't on the field as much. You're not getting exposed. If I'm a USC fan, I'm looking for that. But overall, they won the game. You have to give them credit. I think you take the W and you move on. But I would say there's still a lot of work to do on the defensive side of the ball if you're Lincoln Riley and that coaching staff. But that being said, we've kind of danced around here a little bit. We're to get into our conference championship game picks for the Big Five. We're going to start with the ACC. We'll go ACC. We'll go SEC. We'll go Big 10, Big 12, and we'll finish up, in the Pac-12. So we're not going to spend a crazy amount of time on this. We're going to give you the two teams that we think are going to get there, and then who's eventually going to end up winning the conference and taking home the trophy. So we're going to start with the ACC. Cottrell, you can kick us off.
All right. So for the ACC, for me, I'm probably going to go with two teams that, probably aren't considered the favorite in that conference. And, they haven't been atop of the mountain in any years recently. The two teams that I like in that ACC are going to be Florida State and North Carolina. I think North Carolina ultimately has the quarterback play in Drake May. I know last week, I sounded pretty down on him, and I said he couldn't win. He couldn't win big games, but I do think that changes just a little bit this year. I do think that Drake May will have enough to edge out a team like Clemson. I see that happening. So on the other side of things, clearly I don't have Clemson there. I got Florida State. I think Florida State is going to be a team that when the season is all said and done, they have one loss, and it is out of conference. I really like what they're doing. I think Mike Norvell has done a great job there at Florida State, and Jordan Travis and Drake May, I think, are the two best quarterbacks in that conference. And ultimately, I think the two best quarterbacks are going to find ways to get their team to that conference championship games. I'm not a Cade Klubnik fan at all. I think Dabo has to go back to the drawing board there. We saw what he could do last year with some limited experience, and so I'm not really a big believer. I think Clemson's defense will be phenomenal again because every year they always are. But we saw the limitations of that Clemson team when they didn't have a strong quarterback at the helm with DJ. So I think it's going to be a little bit more of the same this upcoming year. So I like Florida State versus UNC, and ultimately I like Florida State to come out victorious and win that ACC crown their last year in the conference.
So I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to agree with you halfway. I'll meet you halfway on this one. I do agree that Florida State makes the championship game. I do agree with what you said. I think this is Mike Norvell's, best team by far. His first full recruiting class, that he had in. They're all juniors or redshirt sophomores now. That's always when you look for, for the teams to really take that jump. And he's got a lot of those now. You already mentioned, led by Jordan Travis. I think Florida State has the experience and enough, explosiveness out of their skill position players. I think they definitely make the championship game. I think they are definitely one of the two best teams in the ACC. Part I'm going to disagree with you on is I'm going to go with Clemson. I think, and I'm going to go with Clemson for the reason I hate Notre Dame, or I hate North Carolina's defense. I think North Carolina's defense is debatably worse than USC's, who we just talked about. And as much as I love Drake May, I don't. It's tough to ask a kid to go out and have to score 45 plus points every single week to win a game. And I think that's what North Carolina is going to have to do. I love Clemson's defense. I'm going to agree with you. I'm not super high on Cade Klubnik, but I do love Will Shipley. And I think this is a little bit of a different year where nobody's really talking about Clemson and being in the college football playoff, or, a lot of people aren't even picking them to make the championship game. I think this is kind of a sleeper team for Dabo. And I think he's going to, regroup and rile up the troops. And I think they're going to play well. I think that defense is going to win them a couple games. And I think Cade does improve a little off last year, though. I think with DJ finally off campus now, and that whole cloud hanging over who's going to start, who should start, blah, blah, blah. I think with him being the undoubted leader of that offense and moving forward, I think he's a little bit better this year. And I like Clemson to make the championship game. But I am going to agree with you. I think your Florida State Seminoles are your ACC champion this year.
All right. Well, looks like we may or may not have an FSU sweep on the board here. But I am definitely going to agree. We do have Clemson. I have Clemson and Florida State playing in the ACC championship. Clemson's defense is phenomenal. A couple question marks on their offense, see how that's going to work out. But as long as their defensive line and their run stoppage can increase from last year, they're going to be going to that ACC championship game. They allowed 2 games last year with over 200 yards rushing, and that is not a typical Clemson defense. So I'm hoping and looking to get that switched up this year. But I do have Florida State ultimately winning the ACC, and 2 words for the reason why. And his name, like we've discussed already, is Jordan Travis. Not only is he a playmaker, but in the last 2 seasons, he's increased his touchdown percentage he's increased his touchdown throws by 9 and also decreased his interceptions by -1. So that shows me maturity with his decision-making and trusting his guys on the outside to make those catches, along with 7 rushing touchdowns. He's really kind of like a mini Lamar Jackson, in my opinion. But here's the real question for Florida State for me is, can they beat a ranked opponent? I mean, last year they had 3 losses. All 3 of those losses came in a row in October, and all 3 of those games were against ranked opponents. They lost to Clemson, North Carolina State, and Wake Forest last year. And those are the only 3 ranked teams that they played. So my big question is, can they step up and win when they actually need to? And we're going to find that out this weekend.
All right, so we have Florida State across the board. We are going to find out. We're going to talk about Florida State in a couple minutes, but we're going to find out what they are real quick this year. So they have a huge test this weekend. Up next, we're going to do the Big 12. We're going to go out, to rocky country, Midwest, farmland, ranches, people that love their football. I'll go first on this one. I think the Big 12 is kind of cut and dry this year. I think there's a couple teams that could probably cause havoc, maybe a Texas Tech, who's a little bit of a sneaky team, returning some people. Not quite sure what TCU is, but they came out of nowhere last year. They lost a lot, but still have a lot there. They have an interesting game this weekend as well. We're going to talk about in a couple minutes. But I'm going to go with the two heavy hitters. Their last season in the Big 12 before they jump ship and take their bags of money and go to the SEC. I think it's the Red River Showdown. You're going to see it twice this year. I think you're going to see it in the regular season. I think you're going to see it in the Big 12 title game. I think Texas and Oklahoma, not only talent-wise, but, just actual play-wise, I think are the best 2 teams in the conference. Brett Venables has Dylan Gabriel back at quarterback. Offense was good last year. The offense, was not the problem at all in Norman last year. It was the defense. Kind of like USC, kind of like North Carolina, same kind of boat. He brought in a couple pretty big kids from the transfer portal. I know they got somebody. They got the linebacker from Georgia. His name is escaping me right now. But Brett Venables is a defensive coach at heart. He was the DC at Clemson forever. I believe he gets that turned around. I don't think that defense is great by any means, but I think they're better this year. I think they probably go to the Big 12 championship, maybe a loss already, maybe 2. And I think they're going to play the eventual champion who I have winning. I think they play the Texas Longhorns. I think they have too much talent. They return eight starters on defense for a team that should have beat Alabama last year. If their quarterback Quinn Ewers didn't get hurt. Quinn Ewers is in junior season now. Talent out the wazoo. He's got Xavier Worthy on the outside. I think Texas is just the best team headed above everybody else in the Big 12. I think as long as they are actually back this year and it's not another, false start per se, another 7-5 season down the road, I just don't see it this year. So I got Texas over Oklahoma in the Big 12 final.
Go ahead, Alex.
All right, sounds good. So I actually have something quite kind of similar, but not quite. I'm going with Texas, of course, versus Texas Tech in my championship game. Part of this does have some Oregon roots to this choice. Tyler Shuck, the quarterback for Texas Tech, did start his collegiate career at the University of Oregon. So I have seen what kind of he's made of a little bit, and I do really like his arm strength and his arm talent. Let's see, where is that? But for me, I do have Texas ultimately coming out and winning that Big 12 title. For me, it's all about the competition inside that Texas camp. For me, Arch Manning is getting the best out of Quinn Ewers and going to push him to be the better quarterback. Then obviously last year we saw a couple flashes before he got hurt against Alabama. But I think Arch Manning is actually going to push him. Having him on his coattails the entire season is going to make Quinn Ewers a better quarterback. He's ultimately going to show out. Plus, I really want to see Xavier Worthy, the wide receiver for Texas, step up. 2 years ago, he had almost 1,000 yards receiving. Last year, with just 2 less catches, he had only had 760 yards. So I really would like to see Quinn go to him a little bit more, have him step back up, become that 1,000-yard receiver, give him an ultimate weapon, especially with losing Bijan Robinson to the NFL. Someone's going to have to step up somewhere, and I think he's the guy that's going to do it.
Makes a ton of sense. I'm ultimately gonna agree with you guys. Obviously, you saw the show last week. You saw I had Quinn Ewers winning the Heisman. Can't win the Heisman and not have your team in the conference championship game. So of course, I got those Texas Longhorns on as one of the teams in that Big 12 championship. On the other side, I'm actually going to have to agree with Bill on this one. I do like that Oklahoma team. I think Brent Venables is going to have their defense ready to go again this upcoming year. And Dylan Gabriel is a 60-year quarterback at this point. Like he knows college football like the back of his hand. So I think he's going to put his team in a position to get to that Big 12 championship game. But ultimately, I got Texas winning it. I think Quinn Ewers and company is going to be too much. And, I gave my preview last week. I think Texas finds a way into that college football playoff as a one-loss conference champion. So love Texas to have a phenomenal year for all the reasons you guys said. Love Quinn, love Xavier. And I think that defense, is going to show to be a lot better. And if they need to make one stop, I think they will this year.
I agree. I think Texas is the class of the Big 12 this year.
Here,
I'm not going to harp on it. I mean, they got their 2 best players are Big 10 transfers. Just saying. But but we're going to pivot. We're going to call an audible here. We're going to say the Big 10 for the end with the Pac-12. So we're going to go to the SEC next. Alex, why don't you kick us off on this one?
Sure. Yeah, the SEC as always. Power Conference. I do see the SEC being a little bit down this year. I do have 2 teams that we talk about a lot on this show, but as everybody should talk about these 2 teams as they are powerhouses and they have been for a long time and they will be for time to come. And that's going to be Georgia versus LSU. I do see Georgia having a down year this year compared to previous seasons. And this year I'm super high on LSU. For me, it is all about Jaden Daniels and what he can do with that LSU team on the ground, through the air. Let me see. Just over the last 2 seasons, he's increased his passing touchdowns by 7 and decreased his interceptions by 7 as well. So that alone is going to already increase it. As if he does that same increase as far as productivity and decision making, and he adds that same exact type of mentality this year, he can really go a long way. Also, we got Malik Neighbors coming back. 1,017 yards receiving, only 3 touchdowns, though. I look for them to have an even better connection this year. Look for him to have almost double-digit touchdowns. Yes, you heard it here first. I don't know if that's really a hot take, but I do have Malik Neighbors going absolutely off this year with Jaden Daniels as well. And Jaden Daniels is slowly sneaking up in my top 5 Heisman race, and winning the SEC title this year over Georgia is probably going to put him in that New York conversation.
So you got LSU over Georgia.
I have LSU over Georgia, but here is the one kicker that's going to kind of reel me back on my excitement just a little bit, is the fact that Jaden Daniels was sacked 43 times last year. If they don't change that and fix that as soon as possible, that's going to be a problem because we can't have him getting hurt. If he goes down, LSU's season goes down with him.
All right, good show. What do you got, bud?
So, I think Georgia's going to take care of business on their side of the conference. I know Alex mentioned he thinks Georgia's going to have a down year. I really just don't see how that's going to be possible because I don't think they play anybody. You can talk about, yes, they do have to play Florida. We saw how bad Florida was. Yes, they do have to play Tennessee. I think Tennessee is going to be a little overrated this year. They lost their number one receiver in the Biletnikoff winner, Jalen Hyatt, and they also lost their quarterback, Hendon Hooker. Not a huge Joe Milton guy. I think the arm talent is there, but I just don't see Tennessee being a threat on that side of the conference. And then on the other side, I think it's going to be a bloodbath, and I don't think it's going to be your normal team. I don't think Alabama is going to have a phenomenal year this year. So many question marks at their quarterback position. And I'm going to go with Alex and not picking Alabama, but I'm going to roll with Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M, this is the year where that great recruiting class from 2022, those guys are sophomores now. They got a year under their belt, and they're going to be led by Connor Wegman, who was their starting quarterback towards the end of the season last year. He showed you he can go out there and he can compete with the big boys, and I think he's going to be ready to go this year. And, they have the luxury of their toughest game of the season being against Alabama, and that's going to be at home. So I truly think that A&M team can get some momentum and they're going to build some confidence. And I think they win, that side of the conference. And ultimately, I do think it's going to be the same old song and dance that we've seen for the past 2 years. I think Georgia ultimately comes out on top and they punch their ticket to the college football playoff.
So I think the SEC is interesting this year because I think some of it is very normal, what we're used to the last couple of years. And then I also think, the other side of it is, it's going to be a bloodbath. I think we're going to take a bunch of new avenues that we're not used to taking. So I'm going to get the East out of the way. I'm going with Georgia. While I will agree that, I don't think this Georgia team is going to be as good as the last two teams that won the national championship. I don't. I mean, and I know how ridiculously hard it is for anybody to win 3 national championships in a row. I think they're going to give themselves a shot. But that being said, I don't think this team is as good as the last 2 years. But I just don't know who's going to beat them. I agree with Cottrell. If you want to sell me Tennessee, I'm a little biased against Tennessee because I know what Joe Milton is. Joe Milton started at Michigan, had everything handed to him. Kid is a freak athlete. He's a great kid too. So I'm not saying anything bad about him. He's a great kid. Has a bazooka for an arm. He just throws it to the wrong team way too much. His issues of being a starting quarterback and at a huge school for at a high level conference are not physical. They're mental. They lost Jalen Hyatt, who was their all everything last year. Hendon Hooker's go-to guy and also a safety valve. If he got in trouble, he just threw the ball up in the end zone and Jalen Hyatt would just go get it. We saw what Florida is. So that whole Florida-Georgia game that everybody likes to hype up in Jacksonville every year, that's going to be a bloodbath this year if that's what Florida is. If Florida is what we just saw them 2 nights ago, good luck. That's going to be a beating. On the West is where we have fun this year because I don't think it's the normal dominant Alabama team. I think they have 3 quarterbacks. I still don't think they have any idea who the hell they're going to play. And I believe that. I think there's a chance you see all 3 of them. I think it's concerning that not one of the 3 of them could separate themselves enough to get the starting job. And I think the longer that goes, the more that goes against Alabama. I'm not as high on Texas A&M as Cottrell is. I think they're really good. I just still don't know how much I trust that offense. I think Jimbo lets his ego get in the way. He brought in an offensive coordinator to take that off his plate and really get that offense going. I want to see how long that lasts. I do agree the one advantage they have is that, Alabama has to go to College Station. That is not an easy place to play a football game if you're the away team. Ultimately, though, I'm going to go with Jaden Daniels and LSU. I'm not going to talk about them too much because we're going to talk about them in a couple minutes. But I got LSU versus Georgia in the championship game. That being said, I think Georgia still wins. I think Georgia is your SEC champion. And they punch their ticket to the college football playoff again. So next up, we're going to do the Big Ten. Alex, you're going to have to start us off on this one. And Cottrell, I'll give you the choice if you want to go second or last on this one.
Yeah, everyone's probably watching to find out have you guys argue between your picks anyway, so I'll be quick about it. But yeah, for the Big Ten, I've been really excited about Michigan this year, as everybody is. I mean, obviously their preseason ranking has them pretty high up there. And Cottrell, stop shaking your head because I do have them going up against Iowa in that Big Ten championship game. Ultimately, I do have Michigan winning. Their defense, their running game is just going to be too much for the Iowa defense. They're not going to be able to stop. Not going to be able to stop them at all as far as it goes to them. So I cannot talk today, guys. But no, I have Iowa and Michigan playing in the Big Ten championship. Michigan is just too much, too fast, too strong, too good on the outsides, too good on defense. It's going to be a bloodbath. But I do have Iowa coming out of the other side of the bracket. And ultimately, I'm having that game being a blood 42-3. It's not going to be pretty. Michigan winning the Big Ten.
That's kind of poetic there, Cade McNamara would get to go up against his old team. I can see the storylines in that one. Bill, I'll go next here because I just don't want you guys to overwhelm me with this maize and blue nonsense garbage. So let's just get it out the way. I got Ohio State, coming out of the best half, or I say the best half of a conference in the entire college football landscape. So I think that is going to be a bloodbath. I said it before. I'll say it again now. Do you think there's a possibility that you can go into that, Big Ten championship game week where you have three teams sitting there at 11-1 each with Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State? But ultimately, I do think Michigan is going to lose to Ohio State that final game of the year. I think Ohio State, they lost two years in a row in the game. Ryan Day knows what's at stake here. He has single-digit losses in his career, and you got folks all around Columbus talking about his Ryan Day on the hot seat. That's how serious they take that game here. And I do think Ryan Day learned a little something in that college football playoff game against Georgia. Just relax a little bit, let the game plan flow, let your quarterbacks have a chance to attack the game, and you're going to be successful. Obviously, outcome didn't come out the way they wanted to, but it gave you the blueprint going forward. Obviously, the Buckeyes did lose CJ Stroud, but they're returning a lot of pieces offensively and defensively, led by Marvin Harrison Jr. So I do think that Ohio State offense will be fine, and I expect the defense to be better a second year in that Jim Knowles system. Now, on the other side, again, I'm going with someone completely different than Alex again here. I'm going to go with those Wisconsin Badgers. Luke Fickell's first year in Wisconsin, I do think he's going to have that team ready to go. And I like what they did. They went out and got a veteran quarterback in Tanner Mordecai, and their running game with Braylon Allen, I do think is going to be really good. So I think that Wisconsin team will adapt to Luke Fickell very fast. Luke Fickell's a guy who's very familiar with the Big Ten, former head coach for Ohio State, so he knows what that conference is like and what those rivalries are like, being in that atmosphere. But ultimately, I have Ohio State winning the Big Ten and again punching their ticket to the college football playoff.
Well, for once, I'm actually going to agree with Cottrell. Only on half of it, though. I'm going to go with Wisconsin coming out of the West as well. For all the reasons Cottrell mentioned, I think Luke Fickell is bringing a whole new system in, the air raid, bringing in Mordecai in from SMU. I think was a big pickup for them in the portal. Braylon Allen is one of the top 5 backs in the entire country. And I think Wisconsin's just going to have too much. I think as good as Iowa, or I'll say this, as much as Iowa, I think is going to improve offensively this year with Cade McNamara. They got Eric All from Michigan as well, a really good tight end. I think defensively they lost a lot last year. They lost their best pass rusher. They lost their best linebacker. I think it's going to be a different look for Iowa this year. I think they're going to be good. I just think Wisconsin's going to be better. I think Wisconsin is really going to give them fits offensively. So when I think they play each other, I think Wisconsin's going to pull out the W. Too much Braylon Allen down the stretch for me there, and I think Mordecai is going to put up too many points that Iowa's not going to be able to keep track. I'm going to go to the East, and I'm going to completely agree with what Cottrell said. I think it's the best division in any conference in the country this year, because I do think you have 3 bona fide teams that you can make a case, some stronger than others, but can make a case to not only win the Big Ten East, win the Big Ten, and also possibly make the college football playoff. I think Penn State's going to be very good. I think Ohio State's going to be very good. I think Michigan's just going to be a little bit better. I think, we have J.J. McCarthy back. I think he's the best. I think he's the best quarterback in the conference. We have the best duo of running backs in the conference in Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. We have both our starting wide receivers back and Roman Wilson, Cornelius Johnson. Offensive line is reloaded. We still have 2 All-American guards, which is huge. They're not going to miss a beat offensively. And I know the Ohio State fans want to give me Jim Knowles' second year and improvement and all that good stuff. To me, at the end of the day, it comes down to they have to prove that they're tough enough for me. They had all those talented guys on the team last year. They had their Tommy Eichenbergs and all those guys. And midway through the fourth quarter, they quit. Not tough enough. Michigan's going to line up. Everybody knows what we're going to do. If you can stop it, you can beat us. And I think the only other thing that we'll see how he progresses. I'm not going to sit here and say Kyle McCord is not a good quarterback because he is. He is. Everybody. Some people make you believe that the sky is falling and they don't have Justin Fields anymore and they don't have C.J. Stroud. Kyle McCord's very good. He's a 5-star kid. Now, is he on that level of C.J. Stroud the last 2 years? Justin Fields the 2 years before that? That remains to be seen. And I need to see that. And, because I think if he doesn't get to that level of play, as good as Marvin Harrison Jr. is, and he is that damn good, he's the best wide receiver in the country, and I don't think it's close. And that's coming from a Michigan guy. He's special. I think he's different. I don't know if Kyle McCord's capable of going into the big house and winning that game this year. I don't. And for a Michigan guy, I've always said I think Ryan Day's a great coach. I don't have a bad word to say about him, other than I think Cottrell would agree with this. I think he gets too conservative sometimes. But that being said, I think it's gonna end up like it always does. I think it's gonna come down to the Buckeyes and the Wolverines. I think Penn State's right there. I think Penn State might even beat Michigan at home. But I think November 26th, 27th, whatever day it is this year, I think when the Buckeyes go to Ann Arbor, I think it decides the Big Ten East. And I think it decides who wins the Big Ten, because I think whoever comes out of the East wins the Big Ten. So I'm going with Michigan over Wisconsin in the final. So last but certainly not least, I'll be quick here. I'll give it to Cottrell, and then I will let Alex go clean up here on his home conference Pac-12.
That's right. Oh, by the way, when Michigan and Ohio State play, y'all got to go deck out, and I'm gonna wear a ref's outfit, and we're gonna have you guys argue it out round for round, see who wins.
We are weird. I mean, I'm not gonna speak for Cottrell on this, but we don't get disrespectful with each other, which is really weird for like Michigan and Ohio State fans. We keep it above board, and that is mainly because I do love the man. I make joke all the time. I always say he's like the only Buckeye fan on the planet that I love, and it's true. That being said, I hope we kick the shit out of him. Like it's there, and I know he feels the same way. But we just, for the sake of the show and everything else, like we get into it. Don't get me wrong, but we keep it on a respectful level.
I will say too, Shally has had the luxury of, since I've known him, Ohio State has actually not beaten Michigan. First year that I knew him, Michigan quit and didn't want to play us because we were clearly the better team and COVID was going on. So they used that as an excuse. And then the next 2 years, Michigan just were the better team and they beat us. So you can't really say too much, for me at least, until that day actually comes, because then I'm like, oh, or at least that week comes, because I'm like, oh, we're going to beat you. It's not going to be close, and there's no doubt in my mind. But then, seeing how the game progresses and things like that, I really haven't been in a position to talk because my team has lost the past 2 years. And, 3 years ago, they didn't play each other. So I don't worry, though. When Ohio State wins this year, not if, when Ohio State wins this year, there will be a lot of talk coming from me.
All right, so here we go. I'm praying that the dynamic doesn't change, but we'll see. So we're going to go to the Pac-12. Don't hate me, Alex. Don't hate me.
I can already feel the disrespect coming through the screen, so just bring it on. Bring it on.
Your team is the odd one out for me, and I hate saying that. I got USC versus Washington in the final. I like Caleb Williams too much. I just think when the lights shine brightest, that guy just shows up every single time. And I just don't see it changing. He's going to be the number one pick in the draft next year. Arizona's in full tank mode to get him and rid themselves of Kyler Murray. I just think he's just that guy. And watching him last week didn't change any kind of opinion from me. I will tell you this. I went back and forth between Washington and Oregon. And for me, the difference is I think Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. are kind of interchangeable. I think both the offenses are super explosive. I think both offenses are going to score a lot of points. And I could be wrong, so don't take this with a grain of salt. But I slightly like Washington's defense better this year, and it's not by a lot. So again, 12 weeks from now, I will not be surprised if I'm on here, saying I was dead wrong. But I'm going to go Washington versus USC in the final, and I think ultimately USC prevails in a shootout, run up and down the field, looking like a touch football game type football game.
All right, well, Alex, I got your back here, man. I do have Oregon in my Pac-12 championship game. I do think those Ducks being in Dan Lanning's system for that second year is going to help them out very much defensively. And I think Oregon kind of got off to a bad start last year because their first game of the year they got thrown to the wolves against a Georgia team that already fully knew what Dan Lanning was going to run, and a team that had literally just come off of a national championship win. So I do think Oregon will bounce back this year. And I do think that, those Ducks will find a way to make it to the Pac-12 championship. And on the other side, I have USC. I mentioned a little bit earlier, I love Caleb Williams. And I think when you have a guy like Caleb Williams on your team, you're going to win 10, maybe 11 games in the year. And that's going to put you in that conference championship game. So I got USC against Oregon. And Alex, this is where I'm going to have to break your heart a little bit. I got USC ultimately winning. I think Caleb Williams will take care of business against that Oregon team. I think he's going to outperform Bo Nix, and you're going to see Caleb Williams, that USC team, I think, have a claim for the college football playoff. I do think at that point they're going to have 2 losses, but I think, unlike last year, they're going to have that conference championship attached with it. And so, they're going to make an argument just like anybody else would.
All right. Well, I had to put you guys on mute, and you're lucky I don't have a hair tie. Put my hair up because we're about to fight here. No, honestly, the second Bill said that Michael Penix Jr. Oh, thank you. Now I got a hair tie. So, anyway, the second he said Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix are interchangeable, I absolutely almost went bonkers over here on my side of the screen. Bo Nix is an absolute stud. All right, he at Auburn, his very first year as a freshman, he came back against this very same Oregon team that he now plays for and showed us what he's made of. And as an Oregon Duck fan, I hated Bo Nix. I cursed his name for years until he became an Oregon Duck, and now he's my favorite player of all time. You know how that works. But no, for me, I have Oregon Ducks, and after last night's stomping and defense showing out, I have Utah in the Pac-12 championship. I think Washington, I have Michael Penix Jr. as my Heisman top front runner. So I'm not trying to show favorites as far as Oregon goes for everything. I'm totally professional today. No team colors whatsoever, unlike you two over there. Your Michigan helmet in the back and your Buckeyes sweatshirt. The Oregon Ducks are going to win because they're the best team in the Pac-12. That's why they're going to win, and not because I'm a fan, but because that's how it is. Bo Nix is going to be going crazy all over other teams' defenses this year. We got Trayshawn Holden. He's coming in. He's going to make a huge impact. Michael Penix Jr. in Washington, they're going to be too one-dimensional. They're not going to be able to run the ball this year, and defenses are going to double team the wide receivers on the outside. And then we got USC. Their defense is they're going to slip up at least twice this year. They play Oregon, they play Oregon State, and who else do they got on the schedule that I have them losing to? I can't remember off the top of my head. But Oregon, I have them as a one-loss team. That Texas Tech game is really going to be interesting. But I think Texas Tech, making it to my pick, the Big 12 championship, that helps the Ducks get into the college football playoff. But I do have Oregon and Bo Nix beating Utah in the Pac-12 championship, and I have it as an overtime game.
All right.
So with that being said, the Oregon Ducks start off their schedule today against Portland State. They were talking to Dan Lanning today or yesterday about what he was looking forward to the Oregon Ducks this year. And even though they are heavy favorites over Portland State, he said he's really looking forward to seeing how they're tackling, making sure they're trying to force turnovers on the defensive side of the ball, and they want to see the offense move the ball efficiently and also not force turnovers. And he wants to see Bo Nix's decision making with the new offense. So I am excited to see what they can do going forward with their opening week game.
Sure. What are you looking for Kyle McCord's big debut tomorrow?
I mean, with Ohio State, that's like you said, it's pretty easy to say Kyle McCord. That's 100% what I'm looking at. I just want to see if he has that chemistry with those receivers and how long it takes for that to get there. I know, a couple years ago when you saw CJ Stroud, they opened up the year against Notre Dame, and he didn't look great in that game. Obviously, Notre Dame is a really good team, especially for your first career ever start. And then the second game of the year, they had Oregon that season. So I do think that is very, very tough. And that year, Oregon actually came into the shoe, and they ultimately won that game. So I do feel for McCord, and I do think that Ohio State put him in a better position to succeed. You get an Indiana team who's not expected to be really anything at all. You're basically 40-point favorites in that one. So I just want to see Kyle McCord have a chance to go out there and just be free. You have all the weapons in the world. So I want to see them open up not necessarily open up the playbook fully, but I do want to let them, just give Kyle McCord control of that offense and just let the ball fly. And small other thing that I do want to see, Travion Henderson. I want to see how he's recovered from that injury last year that ultimately held him out the back half of our season and that game that he didn't play in the college football playoff. I want to see if he's back being that shifty running back that I saw his freshman year when I said that him and Donovan Edwards were going to be going back and forth about being the first and second back off the board in this class. Like I know he has that talent in him. I want to see if he can get back to that step that he was at his freshman year.
Yeah, so for the Michigan game, I'm going to stay in the same area you are. I'm going to stay in the running back room. I want to see what Blake Corum looks like. Like I said, he was well on his way to being, getting an invitation to New York for the Heisman Trophy last year. Wasn't going to win it, but he deserved to be there. Got hurt in the Illinois game. Couldn't play. Tried to play in the Ohio State game, and it just wasn't going to work. But I want to see how healthy he is. Apparently he's stronger. He's added 10 pounds of muscle. He's gotten a little bit faster, and then ultimately on top of that, I want to see how the running back carries are split between him and Donovan Edwards. I still think Donovan is the better running back in the long run. He's the better pro prospect by far, in my opinion. Cottrell just mentioned it. We've been talking about this a couple of years because the top two backs came out of the same area, and one went to Ohio State, one went to Michigan. Donovan Edwards was for lack of a better term, he was a savior the last couple of weeks of the year. Everybody saw what he did against Ohio State with a broken hand, and then did the same thing in the championship game, and then ultimately in the loss to TCU in the semifinal. So I'm really curious to see the time split there and the carry split, because I don't think it's going to be as predominantly heavy towards Blake Corum as it has been in the past. Because I think Donovan Edwards has earned his fair share of carry. So I think Michigan rolls tomorrow. Got a couple guys out with the coaching suspensions. I think it might be a little sloppy at the beginning until they iron everything out in a kind of a game time situation. But ultimately, I think they get going and they handle East Carolina handily. So that's the one thing I'll be watching for tomorrow. You saw the points for Oregon and Ohio State respectively. This is something we're going to do every week. It probably won't be our home teams every week. It'll probably be games that maybe we're not going to do a full preview on, but games that we still definitely want to mention on air and talk about for a brief second here and there. That being said, we're going to go into our game previews now. We're going to go game previews, and we're going to pick them. So first game we're going to talk about is going to be in Happy Valley later tonight, 7:30. It's going to be a whiteout game, Penn State versus West Virginia. Cottrell, I'm gonna side to you here. I'll let you go first since you are a Big Ten guy like myself, and then I will chime in a little bit, and I'll let Alex clean this one up, and then we'll go to the next game.
Yeah, so I think this game's going to be a blowout. I like Drew Aller in his first, start fully with that Nittany Lions team. I think he's gonna have a great first game, and I fully expect him to take care of business in that game. I like Penn State to win by 20 plus. I think they cover. I think the spread was at 20 and a half. I think they cover that rather easily. And West Virginia really doesn't make this game close.
I'm not going to disagree with anything you said. I'm curious. I don't want to say curious, but I want to see Drew Aller play as a starter. Penn State was smart for scheduling this game at home. Well, not home, obviously, but making this a 7:30 kick. It's going to be a whiteout. He's going to have that entire stadium behind him. It is one of, if not the most intimidating place to go play a college football game. West Virginia is not on the, just not up to par, not on the same tier of team as Penn State. I think they're going to start early. I think they're going to let, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen run the ball a lot. I think get him a couple easy throws to get him comfortable, get him in the flow of the game, and then sit back, let Kalen King and that defense just eat. I think this game gets ugly. I don't think Drew Aller even finishes the game. I think he's probably pulled. So I like Penn State big here as well. I think they just run all over West Virginia. Drew Aller has a pretty good game, as his debut as a starter. And Happy Valley will be rocking later tonight.
All right, yes, I have Penn State West Virginia game. I do also have Penn State winning, covering that 20.5 spread pretty easily. But one thing I am actually really happy with Penn State scheduling this game, as you mentioned, is West Virginia. They're not one of the top Power 5 teams like they used to be back in the day, but they're no slouch either. They have a really good dual threat quarterback with Garrett Green, and I think he's going to kind of test that Penn State defense a little bit. I don't anticipate the game being close, but I do anticipate the first half being much like that USC San Jose State game, where West Virginia kind of hangs on maybe a little longer than they should before ultimately that run game and the defense with Kobe King step up and ultimately put the West Virginia Mountaineers away. But I am excited to see what Garrett Green brings to the table against Penn State to kind of get their defense prepped for the rest of the season.
I agree. I think West Virginia definitely still has skilled players, at important positions. So they're not terrible by any means. I just, I think you have 3 bona fide top 6 or 7 teams in one division in the Big Ten this year. And I think Penn State's one of them. I just think they're going to run up against, a little bit more experienced, older teams in Ohio State and Michigan. That if they weren't there, I think Penn State would be the runaway favorite to win the Big Ten East. Again, Penn State's my local team. I only root against them 1 week a year when they play Michigan. I will be excited to watch it later tonight and see how Drew Aller looks. I mean, he is highly touted, and I think a lot of people are excited to watch him to play. And they just pray James Franklin doesn't screw him up. And if you are a Penn State fan, you do have to pray for that. So, but we're going to leave the Big Ten. We're going to go south. We're going to go to the SEC. We're going to go, kind of a rivalry game of sorts. We're going to go to Charlotte, North Carolina, where this game is going to be played at Bank of America Stadium, home of the Panthers. We're going to go North Carolina Tar Heels versus South Carolina Gamecocks. Alex, you know what? You can start this one. Give us some SEC knowledge and prediction here.
Yeah, no worries. So we're going North Carolina versus South Carolina. For me, this game is more about unanswered questions than it is about the game itself. For me, it's not North Carolina versus South Carolina. It's May versus Rattler. For me, it's can Rattler cut down the turnovers and play consistently? And can he win a big game? I mean, they're on a 4-game losing streak. Rattler's got something to prove. He needs to cut down on his turnovers to be, put his name as a household name again and become, part of the talks of that Heisman race. Obviously, we've seen what he's capable of, and we know what Drake May is capable of. But for me, it's whichever one of those two plays the better game is going to be the team that wins. Because kind of like last year, they both are very similar offensively and defensively. One of them was 34 points a game versus 32, and defenses were allowing 30 versus 28. So essentially, statistically wise, they're identical teams. And for me, whichever quarterback plays best is going to be the team that wins this game. And I have Drake May as my number 4 Heisman spot right now. If Rattler and South Carolina can pull off the upset here, which it's not that big of an upset, I think it's only 2.5 points, then Rattler will definitely replace May on my top 5 Heisman list.
I agree with everything you said, so I'm not going to take too much time here, and I'm going to spew a couple tidbits here, then I'm just going to let Cottrell go. I agree. I think it comes down to, do we get the Spencer Rattler we got the last 3 or 4 games of the year last year for South Carolina, or do we get kind of old Spencer Rattler, the guy that lost his job at Oklahoma, transferred out, kind of had to rebuild his career? I think we know what we're getting out of Drake May. I think he's going to play well. I do agree with Alex, and I think these teams match up very evenly across the board, both offensively and defensively. I think, while I agree, I think it kind of depends on which quarterback plays better. I think it's which defense steps up. Which defense can maybe force one of these guys into a bad pick, into a turnover on down, something like that. I think that could decide the game, because I think both offenses are pretty high powered. I think both defenses have, they want to play bend but don't break defense, but I don't think neither one of them are even there yet. So I think it might come down to who can get a stop. So I think I think this is a fun game to watch. I will tell you that later this afternoon. I think if you want to watch a game, with a lot of passing and a lot of probably scoring, over under on this is a little bit lower than I thought it was going to be honest. But this will be an exciting game to watch. So I'm going to side with South Carolina as well. I just don't trust North Carolina's defense at all. So, but I'll give this to Cottrell, and he will clean this one up for us.
Yeah, so I'm rolling with South Carolina in this one. I think Spencer Rattler showing you at the end of last season exactly what he is, and I think that maturity for Spencer Rattler has finally started to come out. I do think he is going to be a leader on that South Carolina team. I think Spencer Rattler had all the momentum in the world last year, and he would have had the ability to ultimately decide to go to the NFL last year. Now, by no means was I expecting him to go and be a first round pick or anything like that. But I think if he was, truly not focused on getting better and improving himself, I think he could have, once the NFL, been drafted and found himself on a roster spot. But instead, he went back to college. He put his head down and he went back to work. And I think you're going to see that in this game. I think Spencer Rattler is going to become a household name. And I think South Carolina is going to have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder because of, those wins they had late in the season last year against Clemson and against Tennessee. And North Carolina is the team that's ranked currently, and they went on that 4-game skid at the end of the season. So I think South Carolina will have that chip on their shoulder. And I think Spencer Rattler ultimately is going to be the one that leads that Gamecocks team to a win.
I think it's going to be a close game. I think it being, I guess it's still technically a de facto home game for North Carolina. It's in Charlotte, but it's not going to be on campus. 2.5-point spread. It's always a dreaded 2.5 one way or the other. But I think it's a very good game. Like I said, I think it's going to be exciting to watch, and you are getting 2 of the better quarterbacks in the country. So tune into that one. That one is later this afternoon. We're going to switch gears. We're going to go to like an interconference matchup here, which kicks off a little bit at noon, a little bit early for 2 West Coast teams, honestly. We're going to go with TCU, 21st ranked TCU Horned Frogs, versus the new, hopefully improved Deion Sanders-led Colorado Buffaloes. I will go last on this one. Cottrell, I'll let you kick this one off.
Yeah, so I think this game, to me, it's not being looked at in the correct fashion. I do think that obviously TCU, coming off of their huge season last year, you also have to realize that offensively they lost their starting quarterback in Max Duggan. They lost one of their top 2 running backs last year in Kendre Miller. They also lost Quentin Johnston as well. I think that's a lot for a team to overcome. And I fully understand this Colorado team is going into this season in reality with no expectations. I understand the expectations that everyone around is putting on this team because of, Deion Sanders being there and how he talks and things like that. But I think I really think that Colorado did a good job of attacking this past offseason. They hit the portal hard. They got 53 kids, new into that Colorado system. And I love what they did with it. Their coaching staff. They brought in Sean Lewis from Kent State, their head coach last year, who led, one of the fastest fastest paces of offense in the entire country. And that led Kent to have a lot of success last year. That he also brought with him 2 of their starting offensive linemen. So Colorado last year, their offensive line was absolutely horrible. Now they got 4 guys that have experience under their belt who are quality players. And so I do think Colorado is going to be able to hang with this TCU team. I think this is going to be a great, big noon kickoff caliber game. And, I know the spread's 20.5. I'm going out on my branch and I'm picking Colorado to win this game outright. I think Shedeur Sanders puts his name on that world stage, and you're going to be hearing way too early talks of, is Shedeur Sanders really a Heisman contender? I don't think so, me personally, but I'm saying you're going to hear that noise after this game is over and Colorado beats TCU.
Wow.
What you got, Alex? I'm gonna go last on this one.
Man, I was sweating just listening to all that. So let me just start off by saying the simple fact: Colorado has had 2 winning seasons since 2005. My man, 2. I get the whole transfer portal. I get the new coach. I get the new offensive system. Shoot, they brought in Alabama's defensive coordinator, right? I mean, This team is brand new. Nobody knows what to expect. But here's one thing about TCU. They just came off of a national championship loss. That's the ultimate chip on your shoulder. And not to mention Chandler Morris, they saw him as better than Max Duggan last year because he actually started as the starter until he got his knee hurt against Colorado last year. So I don't see that big of a step back at that quarterback position. I think coming off this injury, if he can stay healthy, TCU is actually going to be in talks with that Big 12 further into the season than we anticipate. But I do agree with you. I do have Colorado obviously over that 3.5 win projection that they're slated for. I think they're a much better team than that. But being a new team with that many new faces, that many new players, I think it's going to take 1-2 weeks to gel and actually get on like the same page with everybody. I think by the time they get to Colorado State, they're going to be rolling on all cylinders and showing people what they're made of. And I do see Shedeur Sanders. He had 3,700 passing yards last year with 40 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions. You can't teach good decision making, and he definitely has it. It just depends does he have the arm strength and the arm talent to be a more talented cornerback than he was seeing in previous years. So I actually do have TCU winning, but I do have Colorado coming in under that 20.5 points.
All right, so we're gonna have different takes on this across the board. Cottrell's got Colorado winning outright, and Alex has Colorado covering. I'm going the other way. I think TCU covers. I think the more I looked at this, the more I broke it down. I watched a bunch of guys on TV break it down. There's some guys on TV thinking Colorado wins 3 games max top. I don't know if I'm ready to go, that doom and gloom yet. But I will say this. This is obviously going to be Deion's first crack at, being head coach of Colorado, making a statement, going out, just showing the country that, this is a new era of Colorado Buffalo football. Alex mentioned the one thing, they've had 2 winning seasons since 2005. He was brought in and paid money to change all that around, get them back to being competitive. They're going to go back to the Big 12 next year, which I actually think was a good move for them recruiting-wise. They brought in 87 new kids. They have 3 returning scholarship kids that stayed with the program. I know they brought in, new coordinators. Cottrell mentioned that. I get all that. It is a ton of turnover. It's a big change for a lot of kids in one season. I'm not saying Deion's not capable of doing it. We're going to see, though. I mean, Jackson State to Colorado, it is a big jump. And it's a big jump that I don't think people are giving enough credence to. He's playing Pac-12 football this year. And I think he was very successful at Jackson State because he got a lot of kids to go there because of who he was. And that's to his credit, to learn the game from him. But they were playing against kids. He had a couple 5-star kids on his team that were playing against kids that were not recruited by some schools. That's not going to be the case. I think Shedeur Sanders is great. I think he has all the physical tools and the ability to be a very good quarterback. I agree with Cottrell. I think he is. If you'll be real honest, I think he's in that dark horse category of probably 4 or 5 guys that maybe stays in the Heisman hunt a lot longer than people think they're going to right now. That being said, the big key for me is the guy that Alex mentioned at the end of his preview, Chandler Morris. This guy was having a great game against Colorado when he got hurt at the beginning of the second half and hurt his knee. This guy was going to be the starter last year. He was a starter. He beat Max Dugan out, in spring ball for the starting job. He's a very good quarterback. They did lose Quentin Johnson. I know they lost a couple pieces elsewhere. They have a lot of guys back on defense, though. So I think this is going to be a struggle for Shedeur Sanders and that Colorado offense. I think you're going to see flashes. I think you'll see plays where you'll see the crazy athleticism that he has and the flashes of brilliance. I just don't think it's going to be enough. He's not going to be able to do it consistently enough with what he has around him to keep Colorado in this game. I think TCU rolls. This game is at home at TCU. It's a weird kickoff time. Not to mention, they're going to kick off at 10 o'clock local time here. So when it's noon for us, right after the show's over, it's 10 o'clock outside of, right outside of Fort Worth where TCU is. It's a weird kickoff time. I hate that for a visiting team. And I think TCU is going to be ready to play. I think TCU rolls in this game. And I think this is kind of a rude wake-up call and a little bit of a reality check for what Colorado is going to be up against this year in the Big 12. So last but certainly not least, the biggest game of the weekend. They actually play tomorrow night. They're going to play this game in Orlando, Florida, Camping World Stadium. So it will not be a true home game for Florida State. I think that was a mistake for them, if I'm being completely honest. I would have kept this game in Doak Campbell and kept it fully of Seminoles fans. But they're going to play in Orlando, Florida. LSU Tigers versus the Florida State Seminoles. I don't care which order we go here. Anybody want to go first?
Yeah, I'll start it off. I'll make it quick and easy. LSU versus Florida State. I have this down as it'll be top 3 most talked about games this year. And I think come December, we'll be talking about one of these teams being in the college football playoff, and this game ultimately keeping one team out and getting one team in. Early season implications, and I'm excited for it. The points right now is at 56.5. Honestly, I think this game goes way over that. Both quarterbacks are absolutely amazing. They have amazing receivers and weapons on the offensive end. Right now, it really depends on how LSU's offensive line can hold up against FSU's pass rush. I said 42 sacks last year. That's absolutely not the way you're going to win a game, especially when your quarterback is the best player on your team, and keeping him upright is the way you're going to win the game. I do have LSU pulling it out in the end, probably about a 1-possession game. But like I said, I'm excited, man. This is going to be one of the best games of the year, hands down, and we get to see it week 1.
Agreed. Because I agree with you so much, I'll go right after you. I think this is going to be a great game. But I will say, though, and you mentioned it earlier, Alex, the big question mark with Florida State is, can they win the big game? Now, I fully understand that they beat this LSU team last year. But if you remember back to that game, LSU had that game in control, and they just gave it up at the end of the game. And so I do think that thought alone is lingering in those LSU Tigers' mind. Jaden Daniels was there last year. Like, he was at the QB spot that lost that game. So I do think it is going to mean a little bit more to that LSU team. And I think they have this game circled on their calendar. And so, ultimately, I do like LSU in a tight one. But I think Jaden Daniels, he does enough. And, you talked about it, and again, I'm tooting your horn here, Alex, because you made a lot of great points earlier. Malik Neighbors is going to be one of the best receivers in the country this year, and I think you're going to see that out the gate in this game against Florida State. Him and Jaden already have that connection from last season, and talent-wise, he gets to be the true number one. They lost Kayshon Boutte last year, to the NFL, and so Malik gets to come in, be that number one guy, and I think Jaden Daniels is going to be looking for him, consistently in that game. And the other big point that I think, kind of goes against LSU, their starting running back won't be there in John Emery. But I still think they take care of business. And I ultimately think LSU wins a 1-possession game. I can see this one ending up 31-27. And it's, I think Florida State has the ball last. And LSU's defense actually comes up with a play to get LSU the ball back. And then they get to just sit on it from there.
I agree with a ton of what you both said. I think there's so many similarities between these two programs and these two teams. I think that's why you see the spread at 2.5, and I think that's why it's going to be a very highly anticipated game to watch. I love that this game is on Sunday night, so kind of bonus programming for us college football fans. Cottrell brought up one thing that I want to start with. I think which coach here, which coach gets that signature win and gets the kind of monkey off their back and can get that, kind of building block win for their program this year. Is it Brian Kelly, who never really could win the big one at LSU, or is it Mike Norville, who left Oregon and went to Florida State and still searching for it there? Kind of got it last year, but with LSU, kind of in a transfer mode last year with Brian Kelly just getting to campus, I don't think it held the weight that a lot of people thought it was going to. If he beats them this year, it will. So which coach gets that W? Which coach, doesn't coach scared? Which quarterback plays better? Is it Jaden Daniels? Is it Jordan Travis? I think the impact play for me is the exact guy that Cottrell mentioned, Malik Neighbors. I think he's going to be the best wide receiver on the field. I think he does have a connection with Jaden Daniels already. I think he has a big game. I'm ultimately going to side with LSU here. Cottrell brought up another really good point, though, that could factor into this game. LSU is going to be missing their starting running back, John Emery, who's been a very talented kid that's had his off-the-field issues the last couple of years. This is an NCAA thing. Brian Kelly really hasn't talked too much about it because I think he's kind of pissed off at the NCAA because he's been nothing but exemplary and very complimentary of what John Emery's done from last year to this year. Got all his academics straightened out. He straightened up his attitude. He's apparently become a leader in the locker room. He couldn't say enough good things about him. He was very, for lack of a better term, he was very pissed off that he's not playing in this game tomorrow night. Sorry. So that's a loss. They're also missing their best defensive lineman in Mason Smith, who is potential to be top 15, top 20 pick next year. That being said, as a whole, though, I like LSU's defense better. I think Florida State had to struggle stopping, not only the run but giving up big games in the pass play last year. We already mentioned Neighbors. I think he has a game and then some tomorrow night. I like LSU. I do think it's a close game. I think it's a great game. The best part about this for me is both these teams took this game. I don't think it ruins either one of their seasons, whoever loses. It's not going to be a conference loss. Whoever loses the game still has their way to the college football playoff if they win out and, has all their other goals ahead of them. So I think it's going to be a really good football game, two really good teams, two top 10 teams. And I'm really looking forward to it. Like I said, I'm glad it's on a Sunday. It's bonus football for us college football fans. So I'm going to go LSU as well. I'll go 33-30. I see it very similar to Cottrell. I think it goes down to the wire, and I got the Tigers, the Bayou Bengals coming out on top. So from here, the only thing we got left to do is pick them, and this is how we're going to do it. We're going to do it if you've watched me and Cottrell before on Wire to Wire, we're going to run it the same way we do there. We're going to pick 3 games every week, and then on top of that, we're going to take a super dog pick. To become a super dog pick, the spread on the game has to at least be 15 points. And if the underdog covers those points, however many they cover that spread by, you get bonus points. If they win the game outright, you get the entire spread that they covered plus how many points they win by. So if you get a super dog right, which, me, Cottrell, and Gene, we all got, I think we all got 2 right last year.
There was definitely more than one.
Yeah, it was definitely more than one. You can rock it up to standings. We will keep the standings separately, and what I mean by that is we'll keep the normal picks in one standings, and then we'll add the super dogs in as well. So I will go last this week. I'll let Cottrell go second. And Alex, since you are new to this, I will let you kick off the first week of Pick'em, sir.
All right, so this week, obviously week 1, typically you have those power teams playing some subpar competition, kind of ramping up for their main schedule. However, this week, my super dog will be San Jose State Spartans over Oregon State. They are 16.5-point underdogs as of right now. This is not about me not liking the Beavers. This is not about me not being an Oregon Duck fan or anything like that. I watched San Jose State play last week. I saw what they were capable of. I saw them fight like dogs in the first half against USC, and I saw them show what they were capable of, which is a team that can compete with the best teams in this country. Now, I'm not saying San Jose State is one of the best teams in the country by any stretch of the imagination, but they're a team that deserves more respect than this. And this is DJ's first game with Oregon State. It's going to be in San Jose State. Like I said, San Jose State's already kicked the tires. They've already seen what their defense is going to do against a Heisman quality candidate as far as that quarterback, Zachariah Branch, against them as far as defensive scheming. I think that going up against Oregon State is going to be such a big drop in competition level from USC that they're going to see this as an easy win for them. And I have San Jose State actually completely winning this game and starting off the season at home the right way. And I have the game, what was it, 31-25, I believe is what I had the game as, in favor of San Jose State.
Perfect.
What are your 3 normal picks?
Yeah, so my 3 normal picks, they're going to be, what we see, we got TCU, we got South Carolina, and then LSU as well.
All right, so we went over all yours.
Okay.
Go ahead, Cottrell.
So my picks for the week, I like South Carolina covering the 2.5-point spread against UNC. We already broke down that game. Not going to go into too much detail there. I like South Carolina to win the game outright, but the 2.5 points, take them. I think it's easy. In that game specifically, I would take the money line just because I am pretty confident there. But if you want to lay the 2.5, so be it. Second game, I like Utah State at Iowa. I like the under. It's at 40. It was at 44.5 last I looked. And, with Cade McNamara's really injury being so up in the air, and, I just don't know what his status is going to be come game time. Iowa already, plays that really tough and gritty defense. I do think Utah State will be, struggling to score the ball. And so I do think, with Cade's, lack of availability, even if he does play, I don't think Iowa's going to try and have him out there doing all kinds of crazy things. So I do like that game staying under 44.5. Last game I like Clemson minus 12.5 at Duke. I know I just went over my ACC preview, and I wasn't a big fan of Clemson this upcoming year, but I do think they're going to take care of business against that Duke team. I think that defense is going to show out. And I think Will Shipley's going to have a day. I could see that being a game where he has, 2, maybe even 3 touchdowns in it. And I think they roll that Blue Devils team. And then my super dog pick, I am rolling with those Colorado Buffalo. I already mentioned earlier, I think they're going to win outright. So cover 20.5 here. I think that just would be the best play of the week for me.
All right, I'm gonna rip through mine here because I share some with both of you guys. I'm going to start with Clemson Duke. I am taking Clemson minus 12.5, just like Cottrell said. I think Klubnik, I think Will Shipley, those guys will show up. I think the defense is going to be suffocating for Duke, who struggled at times last year to score points at all. I know it's a little bit of a away game, but again, I liked it. Clemson's kind of under the radar. I don't like them to make it to the end this year, anything like that, but I think the motivation factor for Dabo Swinney and that coaching staff and all those kids is there. Nobody's talking about them. I think they open up at Duke. I think they make a statement. I think they handle Duke quite convincingly tomorrow or later today. Sorry, got such a long week. Can't remember what freaking day it is. Secondly, Penn State, West Virginia. We already went over that. Penn State minus 20.5. I think they roll. I think West Virginia maybe keeps it close for a quarter. I think everybody gets comfortable, and then I think Mr. Aller and Nick Singleton go to town and just start, putting up points on the board for Penn State. So I like Penn State to cover the 3 touchdowns there. And last but not least, I'm going to go with Texas minus 34.5 against Rice. It's home. I think Steve Sarkisian is going to go out and try to make a statement opening week, kind of announce themselves as here. The only thing that scares me about this is I can see them pulling people early because they have Alabama next week. But that being said, I think he wants to go out there. I think he wants that team to look crisp. I think he wants them to execute and make sure everybody is on the same page going into that game next week in Tuscaloosa. So I like Texas big over Rice. And for my super dog, somebody already took it, and I'm going to stick with it because I really like it, and I like it for all the same reasons Alex did. I like San Jose State to cover against Oregon State. I think DJ's first game with the team is away. I like San Jose, the fact that they already had a game to kind of get all the clunks out of the system and iron out any of the wrinkles. They played. They looked very efficient. Cordero balled out, and I think he's going to have even more success against an Oregon State defense that he's going to face later tonight. So I like San Jose State to cover the 16.5 against Oregon State. I think this game goes down to the very end. I really do. I think maybe DJ pulls it out late, but I think San Jose State gives Oregon State everything they can handle and then some later tonight. So that is my Superdog pick. We will keep this updated. We will post this every week. So it'll be easy for you guys to follow along at home. And I think between the three of us, I think we need to have a gentleman's bet here about, either the winner has to get something, or if whoever the loser is, there's got to be some sort of punishment.
We could definitely figure that out. Let's figure it out. Let's not think of something rash here. Let's take a week. We'll figure it out, and then next week, we'll announce to everybody.
If
and we will take suggestions. I was gonna say we do take suggestions.
By all means, fun or anything like that you think would work. By all means, plop it in the comments, and we will discuss. And we'll get our we'll put our heads together, and we'll announce it next week when we do the standings. That is our show for the week. Again, so happy to be here, sharing this with Cottrell and Alex, all the college football fans out there. It's Christmas Day, man. I can't wait to turn this off and go sit on the couch and watch a whole bunch of football. So I'm excited. You guys have anything left to say? Anything closing remarks before we get out of here?
No, I think we've said it all. And as always, go Ducks.
Oh yeah, we definitely have to get a go Bucks. You got the wrong letter. You were right at the end there. Ucks, you got a B, not a D, But I hear you. You tried. Definitely go Bucks in this one, and can't wait for next week. Recap all this madness that's about to happen.
Yeah, recap madness, and we got a huge one next week. I know LSU Florida State is a big game, but Texas, Alabama next year is a heavyweight fight. So that's going to be great. As always, I'll be saying go blue. It's episode number 2, Coast to Coast, College Football Pregame Show. We are out of here. See you guys next week.